So there.
Matt Tracy.
Michael Vickers.
Good to see you. It's my first show, and I'm very happy to have you on board here. Back in November, you were really excited about a new book that you wrote.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. It's right here.
Darker Than the Sky. It's my third book. It's my first real novel. It's a story about a guy and his son who go out into the wilderness looking for gold. It's an adventure story, but it's more than that. It's got sub themes of family and what's important in life, what's a good life, and a big sub theme of a father-son relationship that plays out over the course of the trip. I'm real proud of it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was really excited reading it and pretty amazed at the detail that you came with. This is your first full novel.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then before that, you wrote kind of a novella and a self-help book?
And a self-help book.
Yeah.
That's how I got started in writing was 25 years ago. I started on a journey of the whole idea of what's a good life. How do you make a good life? How do you make a good life for yourself? How do you be? And I'm going to use the word happy, but happy is kind of a shallow word for this whole constellation of what I'm talking about. But let's just use it for right now. Is how do you be happy? And I started reading a lot, trying to figure it out. And as I figured things out, I would write them down. I'd start writing just little notes and little, possibly a little chapter. Someday I'm going to have a book on this. This is actually working. Okay. What can I do? So for 20 years, I was writing notes. I was writing notes.
And you've kept a collection of those notes.
Collection of the notes.
My goodness.
And
longhand notes.
No, I'm sitting down, typing them.
Okay,
sitting down, typing them on the computer.
Okay.
Printing them out, putting them in files, so that I don't lose them. And so in 2019, I retired from my business. I'd sold the business, and on June 19th, 2019 was my last day at the business. And on that day, I got on a plane, went down to LA for a 6-month-long seminar in positive psychology, because that's one of the things that's been very important in the whole happiness idea.
Right.
So every month I would go down there. Every week we would have a couple different meetings, Zoom meetings and stuff like that. And we're getting towards the end of the class, and the teacher said, "Now what I want you guys to do is I want you to think of a bow hag." And he said, "Does anybody know
Explain what a bow hag is?" Right.
Yeah. He said, does anybody know what a bow hag is? And I raised my hand. Ooh, yeah. Mr. Cotter. Yeah. And he's like, "Matt, what is it?" And I go, "It's a big old hairy ass goal." Yeah. And he's like, "Almost." It's a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Audacious.
And
everybody must have been busted when you said that.
And I'm like, I like big old hairy ass goal better.
That's Silicon Valley vernacular, right? That's an acronym from a great book in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I think Peters was his book. Yeah.
So he you nibbling on me, dog?
It's a little doggy here.
So in that class, he's like, "Come up with a big old hairy ass goal." And he didn't say that. I said that. Yeah. And so I did. I thought, I've been gathering all this stuff. I've been thinking about this happiness book for a long time. Okay, here's my goal. I will write the book, finish the book, and publish the book this year.
And that's this book here behind me.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. Happy Here and Now. And I did. And so that worked. That whole idea of a bow hag worked, of putting something out there.
So within half a year.
Within a year. It was like
the year.
It was like December of 2019.
Right.
When I made the bow hag.
Yeah.
And by December of 2020, I was with an editor saying, "This is my final thing. Let's get this ready to go into print." And then COVID hit, and then during COVID,
right.
I published the book. I decided to self-publish it.
Well, let's play on that for a moment because so you had the BOHAG in 19 before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then in March, April of 20, COVID hits, and you're in the process of writing this book.
Yeah.
How did that impact? Because everything changed in our world at that point. How did that impact your writing, or did it?
It actually surprisingly made it beher. I mean,
Tell me more.
I'm one of the lucky people that COVID worked for me. I was retired.
You had already retired, so you didn't have to go to work or anything like that. Yeah.
My wife and I had things we wanted to do. She's an artist; she paints, and I had this book that I was working on, and we just settled in. We just settled in, and it was like going to a writer's retreat, kind of. It's like, here we got nothing else to do. We can't see people. I'm just settling.
You were still doing your meetings with in Southern California at that time?
No. We were done with that. Yeah.
Got it.
So we just settled in and started writing, and I started writing, and it was a really good time. It was one of the better times because of that, because of the ability to say, well, we can't go anywhere. We're going to settle and we're going to do it. So that book, it's a self-help book. It's a straightforward self-help book. It starts off with, hey, here's a definition of happiness. And part of that is, I want to go back to that. I want to go back to that whole idea of happiness, because
Absolutely.
happiness is like you go, I want to be happy.
Right.
And it feels like a very thin word, a very shallow word to me.
That's
It feels like but what's happy? And in the book, I start off with saying, look, happiness has so many angles, so many facets,
Right.
that the one word doesn't do it justice.
No, it doesn't.
But it's the only word I can think of to actually say it in one word.
And connect with
and so
the reader.
happiness has not being afraid, not being anxious. It has contentment. It has good relationships. It has something that you feel good about in your life. That you feel like you're useful.
Yeah.
Contributes to happiness. I talk in the book about a lot of the people that have the authors and the people who have influenced me, and then I have some of my own takes on it, and so yeah, that's always been a frustrating thing for me, is because happiness is a word that it's hard to describe what the book is about until you actually get into it. But it's really more like how to have a good life, because I think when you've done the things within the book, you end up at the end looking back and saying, wow, I had a good life.
Yeah.
And I think that's more important. I think that, and I know you're going to ask another question, because I can
go back and forth.
I can see it going on that. That flows through the rest of my writing, and that's flowing through the rest of the books.
I think one thing we want to make sure we do is that digress and weave and circle back and things like that, because we've got time. Long form, we've got plenty of time to just chew on things and then put it aside and then come back to it later. But one thing that I wanted to touch on right there is, you mentioned that you'd been working on this the notes for 20-25 years, and prior to that, did you grow up a big reader? Was that something that was as a child and then as a teen? Is it something or is it something you picked up over time?
I've been a huge reader my whole life. Yeah. We didn't have a TV until I was 13 years old.
We'll play on that for a second.
Yeah. Well, my parents felt like TV was evil. I mean, not quite that, but they really felt like it was a bad influence on people, on kids, and it took them away from books. It took them away from the other things that kids should be doing. It was a sitting in much like this today.
Well, your mother was an educator, is that right?
She was. She was a middle school counselor. Well, that's another long story. But yes, she was a middle school counselor. And again, just to pop a little thing out there, she actually wrote a book when she was 60 something years old about how to raise teenagers. called Grounded for Life by Louise Felton Tracy.
And that was published in many different languages.
It was a very successful book. It was the most successful book for her small publisher that published it, and it was published in, I think, 5 different languages.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we didn't have a TV.
Well, that had to be an influence. Hold on, the mom writing a book at that age must have been a real positive influence for you, in a role model to say, maybe, hey, maybe someday I can.
Oh
write
yeah,
too.
absolutely. It's like, I've always liked writing. My mom was a writer. Yes, I can do it.
Yeah.
And that's again, I could digress on a lot of things with that whole idea of yes, I can do it, and that sends you back to happy here and now, because there's a concept in there, a spiral of when you have a belief about yourself and you take an action in that step, and then you say something about that action, then you go back and look at that belief again. That belief will have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I talk about it as being a spiral that you can go up or you can go down, depending upon how you talk about yourself.
Right.
And
the self-talk you're talking about.
The self-talk.
Right.
Well, and and what you end up doing right after or before you say that thing.
Right.
For example, you do poorly on a math test, and then you say, I am bad at math. And then you get the chance to do something that's math related, and you don't do it. So then you believe that you're bad at math. And so then you go around on that downward spiral. On the upward spiral is you can have something like, I can write a book. I mean, that's what we were just talking about. I can write a book. And then I start writing, and I go, well, actually, this is coming out all right. And then I go, yeah, I can write a book. My mom wrote a book. And then I go, yeah, I'm actually doing okay with this. And I keep on going, and I write it again because I'm feeling good about myself. I'm feeling that that's something I can actually do. And again, I make that point in Happy Here and Now about how it can be very, very tiny, teeny weeny steps, because we do it so often during the day that it can be a very flat circle that you're going around on. But when that circle keeps on going around, it ramps you up over time if you're aware of what you're doing.
And can there be times where that spiral up can trend back down a bit, and then you have to check yourself to make sure it's going in the right direction? How does that? Is it something that you are actually doing, or is it something that just happens? Does that make sense?
I see it all the time, and I've been working with positive psychology. I've been working with happiness for years and years and years, as I said, and I still. Okay, so I'll go back to.
Yeah, let's go.
We got this book to talk about, but Happy Here and Now. Wrote the book. As I said, it was a great period of time. The actual time after writing the book, after publishing the book, was a little bit of a tough time, because I expected, it to do well. I expected friends and relatives to help me out in certain ways, and I can remember one time in particular where I had asked a friend who is in social media to help me out with the social media, like, can you help me figure out this whole thing? And they'd say, yeah, I'll help you out. And then almost the next week, I'd also given the book to read. Right. And almost the next week, they had the chance on their social media platform, which was a relatively big one, their boss had said, hey, I'm going on vacation. Do you have any books to recommend?
Cool.
And he had said, well, yeah, I recommend 2 books. I recommend this fiction book and this nonfiction book, and neither one of them was my book. And okay, so
how did you catch wind of that?
Oh, I saw it on social media. Oh. So, and that's not the point. The point isn't that. But what that was a point of a downward spiral starting, where I felt myself, and I did this a lot during the marketing of this book, was I found myself going into this downward spiral of, oh, nobody cares about me. I'm all in this alone. I've got to do this all myself. I don't, and I heard myself saying those things, and I would go, and I would, being so aware of the cycle, I would find myself hitting this bottom, and then I would start using the tools of positive psychology that I talk about in the book to bring myself back up. And it's not always just within the spiral. There's a lot of things to do with self-talk where you're where you hear that thing that you just said to yourself, nobody loves me, and then you stop and you say, wait, I've got a wife that loves me. I've got a sister and a brother-in-law that love me. I've got these good friends.
Children.
We go and do things. Children, you start bringing them back and refuting those thoughts. Yeah. And it's so powerful because I saw myself over and over in there start to do this more so than any time other in my life, surprisingly enough, go down because of something that would occur, and I go down, I'd hit it, and I go, wait, back up again, and bounce back up. And that was my term for it was bouncing. It was just go bounce and I'm right back up again. I'm like, wow, that stuff really works.
But here's another thing. I think we skipped over it. You have training in positive psychology. Tell us about that.
Well, the class I went to.
Right. Well, that's the training that you had that when you went down to Southern California.
Yeah, that was a certificate.
So certification,
getting a certification in positive
Gotcha.
psychology, a 6-month class, and to get a certificate in positive psychology. I thought for a little while about getting a master's degree, but that would have meant I would have had to go back to Pennsylvania to do that every month, and so I didn't do it. But,
in that program,
in a master's program. It was.
So you had developed tools to deal with this, and that obviously it sounds like it helped you during this down spot with that first book. That having that training that you went through, you drew on that to help you lift yourself out.
And I think a lot of it comes down to being aware of what's Martin Seligman. I'm going to say the name. Yeah. He's like the father of positive psychology.
He's at University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he was going to be in charge of that master's program that I almost went to. He talks a lot about talks a lot about self-talk, and I think once you become aware of what you're saying to yourself and become aware of the effects of it, he talks in his books about when you start feeling bad all of a sudden, take a second and go back and go, wait, let me look back just a minute or a second and see what I just said to myself. And often it's something like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm bad at this and it's going to last forever. And
so it's really a self-coaching. You're just working
self-coaching
to improve yourself
minute by minute.
Yeah. Wow.
And being aware of it. Yeah. And I in the book I take I talk lightly about his whole all of his research. Is a great amount of research that he's done, which talks about self-talk. And then I go another step further, and this is a lot of what I do in the book, is I go another step further off of the research to what I've realized myself. And one of the things I realized myself is there's what I would call conscious self-talk, and that's that thing we're talking about, is where you just go, oh, I'm going to be awful like this forever. Nobody's going to love me. Oh, I have to, and then you start spiraling down, right? And then you can talk yourself back up out of it. And then there's a whole different level of self-talk that's almost like another little voice in your head, and I'm not sure exactly where it comes from. Maybe it's
quieter, but it's subtle,
very
it's
subtle,
powerful.
Yeah, very subtle. Where it's not, it doesn't feel like yourself that's saying it. It feels like somebody else is saying it. And part of it is because it says you. The little voice doesn't say I'm so bad. It says you're so bad.
Wow. It says it's not your voice. It's like another character.
It's some other voice.
Wow.
And the odd thing is, again, being really aware of it, I've watch this voice, and when I get into a situation where I feel like that voice is going to come, I watch for it. You know, and I sit there and I watch for it, and then I'm ready for it. And when it is, I can refute it or I can laugh at it. Yeah. It's the same voice that often makes you do things that you don't really want, because you hear somebody say, "A donut isn't bad for you," and you go, "Yeah, a donut isn't bad for me." It's like your bad friend voice.
It's the good friend, the bad friend, right?
It's your bad friend voice.
How do I feel today?
So after that whole thing, and right before I actually started writing the book, I went to a class on executive coaching, a week-long class, and I got a certificate in executive coaching, because this is what I'm interested in, is listening to people, asking questions, hearing people's story, kind of what you're doing. And I went to this class and I got a certificate, and I then came back, and there's a company in San Francisco that was trying to put together a virtual executive coaching thing. And I said, they're not going to take me because I don't have the other certificate that I need. But what I'll do is I'll send a resume out to them just to see what it's like. And I knew from the beginning that I was just doing it just to see what it was like, just to see what they get some feedback from. What do you really need? So I sent a resume. I said, what do you really need? Right. Oh my gosh. I hit the send button, and that little voice. I knew that when I hit that send button, there was going to be some little voice that was going to go, you suck, right? Oh. And I knew this.
Like right then.
So I'm watching it. I'm watching for it. and it was so quiet. It knew that I was watching for it. So it said, you suck. I mean, about that, it's like what they said, what the voice said actually was they don't want what you have.
So very quiet,
very quiet,
but so still powerful.
So that I was watching it. It was like whispering, they don't want what you have. Wow. And that is a thing that I don't think I haven't seen that addressed in literature. Yeah. And that's in that book as a slightly different thing.
Interesting. Fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Okay. Yeah, we can get on that.
No, it's good. It's the voice that you have. And then what about, and I've had this, everybody's probably had this, where you have an idea, you want to do something, you want to, do something different. It's the other voices of other people, of people that you love and know and you're close to, and we take it maybe the wrong way. That we hear something that, they're trying to guide you in a way of being careful, or have you thought about this? That's a common one. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? But what if this happens? What if that happens? And I kind of faced that when I was, looking at this YouTube channel. Oh, is that thing of, what about copyright protections? What about, all these things? So, that's got to be just an exponential, issue as far as, kind of guarding against the negative and the positive. And oftentimes we take what we think is a negative, but it was actually presented as a positive, but we redirect it because we have that negative voice. Does that make sense? Did you guys work on that as all, in the program? The outside influences on behavior.
Again, all this stuff gets melded in of basic knowledge I've picked up in lots of places versus knowledge from a positive psychology program.
And your life experience.
And life experience.
Starting a business.
And yes.
And we'll talk about that.
You may have noticed that when you started talking about what you wanted to do, I didn't say anything negative about it. I didn't give you any advice. I didn't give you anything except for, wow, that sounds like a good idea. Right. Maybe who are you looking at? Ask a question that's like, who are you looking at? Who do you want to be like? What do you want this thing to be like? Right. Where are you going with that? And because I'm very aware of that, and I think that's really truthfully possibly the basis of those voices, is the basis of those voices, because they always say you. They don't say me, which is the conscious voice. The unconscious voice says you, and so maybe that's something you've heard from a parent or a friend
Right.
or somebody who every time you try and do something, they say, "Oh, well, you're not going to be able to do that," you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And it might, I don't know, but
Yeah.
yes, that's a huge thing that I'm aware of, and I try not to do it.
Well, let's digress a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because think about children now, and think about their exposure on social media.
Oh yeah.
And what happens with it's been quantified. I mean, it's showing the psychologists, psychiatrists are very aware of this, and they're trying to share that with parents, that the negative interaction that children have that they didn't facilitate, that they post something and it can be crushing. Can you imagine that as a child? You're trying to develop your self-esteem, and it's something you posted that actually goes worldwide. And there's somebody somewhere that you have no idea who they are, what age they are. They could be posing as another 15-year-old, and they're not. And they're writing something that's devastating.
They're writing something awful
about you personally.
And it's hard not to believe it.
It's just, it's a wow. And
yeah.
We both raised kids very successfully, I'd say. And, for me, I now have, several very young grandchildren. And, the parents, my children raising them, it's going to be, their responsibility to guide those children. So the world they're in is much different than what we faced. I'm a teacher in my profession right now. I'm still teaching, and I teach elementary kids. And I do worry about those children, because I see the effects, even though I don't ask them, are you on social media? I'll see children, they're fifth graders, and I'll see a kid with a TikTok sweatshirt on. It seems almost pretty obvious that they're already on TikTok, where legally they're not supposed to be there yet.
Sure.
And it concerns me, and it worries me greatly. And I worry about this next generation of children that we have here, and they're going to need some extra help, I think, as they grow up.
Tools, and you've been, we've talked about that, as you've been giving them tools as you teach them, and I think that's, I've made an analogy before of, if you or I were to hear about an adult that fell into a pool, or a teenager that fell into a pool and just drowned in the pool, we would say, well, wait, why didn't they turn on their back and float?
Right.
Why didn't they dog paddle over to the side and grab hold of the side?
Right.
Why didn't they, as they were going down and coming back up, why didn't they take a breath and bounce off the bottom?
Yeah.
Because all those things were things we learned when somebody taught us how to swim.
Right.
If nobody had taught us how to swim, we might be that person who would whoop and fell in the pool and went, I don't know what to do, and went to the bottom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what kids need, is they need the tools. They need the resilience tools, the happiness tools. They need exactly that. They need
that needs to be
to understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of like, you say, well, you've got to learn how to do math in order to learn how to do more math.
Yeah.
You've got to learn how to have resilience in order to be able to survive in this world, in any world.
Well, and I know that you had some notes. You had a note of an influential book, Mindset, and I'm not sure if that's Dr. Carol Dweck's book from Stanford University, but she's a leading player in that space. And about 6 or 7 years ago, she came out with that book, Mindset. Growth. It's basically called Growth Mindset.
Yeah.
And really looking to equip children and young people and people of all ages with the concept that, here's a great example. And I have this every day at school, where and I'm actually a PE teacher, so I'm not a teacher of academic work, but I work with all the kids, and we'll do some basic cross-sectional things, like, we'll do geography, we'll do math and so forth, and we'll cross curriculum. And I'll have kids that, they say, yeah, I'm really good at math, and they're fourth graders. I'm really good. I got this. I own this. I'm like Einstein. And I say, that's great. But remember, you're going to hit a spot where it's going to get tough. And the thing that the growth mindset is about is, when you get to that tough spot, that you don't quit, that you're equipped with the tools that say, there's a wall in front of me right now. And so what I need to do is build the tools to say, I need to get under that wall, over that wall, around the wall. And there's a common phrase that's used, and it's, I'm not good at that yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
good at that yet. Instead of saying I'm not good at that, that's the failure. That's the non-growth mindset. It's the failure mindset. And I've taught kids for years about, when we're playing basketball, we're learning to shoot a basketball, and I'll see kids that are actually good athletes and they get frustrated because they miss a basket. And I'll say, hey, here's a quick story. When Michael Jordan was a sophomore in high school, he didn't make the basketball team. He was the guy that would spend just enormous time after a game or after practice. He had a key from the janitor to get into the gymnasium, at 5:30 in the morning, so he could practice shooting basketballs. He's always said he's missed more baskets than he ever made.
Yeah.
It's to try to equip kids with the fact, and I think we're in a society now where kids are looking for instant gratification, instant success, and it's that thing of learning to equip them again with that sense of you've got to be strong through the down times. So, and I know that happened with me with math. I was that kid that was like, it's a breeze, geometry, easy. And then it got into pre-calculus or pre-algebra and algebra, and I kind of lost my way. And I didn't have those tools back then.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it got so that it's like, well, this is hard. It's always been easy, yeah. And it hits. And you're right, it hits everybody at a different point.
Yes. And I started hearing the voices not only in my head, but those around me in the groups that I was in. So all of a sudden now I'm tracking in the not high-end math group. And now I'm in this group that everybody's in that same, and we're kind of, it's almost a circle. We're talking about the same thing. We're in this closed loop, and we're all saying, yeah, we're not good at math. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Just like that. It's who you hang out with.
Wait a minute. You were talking to yourselves, and then you do something and it wouldn't work, and then you believe that you were bad at it.
Yes, and then you get that negative support.
Yeah.
That kind of, it makes you feel good. It's almost like everybody's sitting around eating Cheetos, and let's just eat another bag. It feels good.
It doesn't matter. We're all doing it.
Right. And then at the end, and afterwards you go, God, I feel miserable.
Yeah.
So it's kind of,
I had to. Okay. So I went, it was the first month of going to get a master's in business school.
Right.
I'm in a statistics class with maybe a quarter of the people there were engineers because they liked engineers because we're good at math.
And that's your background.
That's
your undergrad. Yeah.
And then everybody else was different undergraduate majors. A lot of people who had gotten to that point of like, well, I'm not really good at math. And we're in the statistics class, and we had to bring back the homework, and there was half the class that said, I don't know, I couldn't do the homework. And I stood up and I go, wait, I'm an engineer. I've done math for 4 hours a day for the past 4 years, well, 5 years, because it took me that long to graduate. 5 years, thank you, UCSB. We had too much fun.
Santa Barbara. Isla Vista.
But I've done
That's
math.
another story.
I've done math for 4 hours a day, every day. And here's what I know about math. The first time you look at a problem, you won't be able to do it. The second time you look at a problem, you won't be able to do it. You'll read the book, you go to do the problem, you go, I can't do the problem. Then you go back and you read the book again, and you do the problem, and you go back. And I said, you have to fight with it. You have to get in there and really just wrestle with it a little bit. And that's what math is. If you have been an English major your whole life and you read books and then you write a essay, it's a whole different way of being. Get into the fact that you're going to have to spend some time with it. And
different part of your brain. It's different muscle.
Different muscle, yeah. It's like you. I think that people thought, oh, either I'm good at math or I'm bad at math, and that comes back to that mindset thing. Is either I'm good at math or I'm bad at math. No, you may be good at math or you may be bad at math, but math takes getting in there and actually spending time and feeling your brain hurt a little bit. And people came back to me afterwards and said, "Oh my gosh, that changed my whole outlook on what I can do with statistics. I can do this class
awesome.
now."
Yeah.
And that was like mindset before mindset,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you've shared a story similar to that with my son, and that's, I think, when he was going to college, undergrad work, and you said, and you gave the example of engineering, that there were books that you read it over again, 2 times, 3 times to get it, to understand it. You read it again to really figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's it's a whole language of its own. It's almost in coming from athletics. Somebody who's really good at baseball, and then all of a sudden they're just going to go pick up a golf club.
Yeah.
And you're swinging it. There's something. It's very similar. What can be hard? I've hit an 85, 90 mile an hour fastball, a curveball, breaking a splitter. This ball's just sitting on the ground.
I should be able to hit this one.
And then the humbling thing is that's humiliating when you're just struggling hitting a ball that's just stationary. And that's part of the beauty of every sport has a complexity to it. Any sport that I would say is worthwhile. When we watch the Olympics and we see the greatest athletes in the world, and they do things that look easy, as if we could just get off the sofa and do something similar. The diving, the two people diving at the same time, and they're synchronized diving. And it looks right, but we know it takes years and years and years of dedication and sacrifice to get there.
And attention to the details, and somehow these people that are doing it, and these divers have failed over and over again. Somehow they failed and failed and failed and failed, and somehow they kept in their mind this whole idea of, I can move just a little bit better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You don't go from here to here and then all of a sudden, super champion. It's every step of the way.
Yeah.
Some people are gifted with more ability, and it's interesting to go into that space. It's good. Let's talk about your second book. This is an interesting one.
Always made that. Okay.
It's novella.
Novella, The Meaning of Life Coffee Shop. So I enjoyed writing Happy Here and Now so much. Here, there you go.
We'll just put this one here for now.
I said, well, I'm just going to keep on writing. This is fun, and that's a whole nother side trip we could take is into process. One of the meanings of life is process, is loving the process. But that's not about this book. So
well, there's three key phrases in this little coffee shop. It's based in San Francisco, right? The setting's in San Francisco, and it's off a little alleyway. And you want to go through the three?
Well, yeah. Well, let me set it up first. Is because I had enjoyed Happy Here Now so much that I said I want to write something else. Well, I don't have another self-help book in me, so I want to write a novel. Right. And so this was basically like, here we go. Can I write a plot? Can I write a dialogue? Can I make this thing work? Can I put it together? And because it's so important to me, I said, well, let's just talk about the meaning of life. It's like I think that's the thing that keeps on drawing me forward through these books is something deeper. Mm-hmm. Trying to put a nice story in with something deeper. And this one got, I would call it a half and half self-help story. Yeah. It's a novella, but it starts off with a guy who's having trouble at work, and he goes for a walk. He's trying to find a coffee shop that he knows, and he gets off in some alleys, and he stumbles upon this little mole coffee shop, Meaning of Life, MOL. And on the wall is these three questions. You'll have to read them for me because I can't get them.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. It's right here. We have here we go. Oh, here number one. Am I moving toward who I'm meant to be? That's one. If I died today, what would I regret? And then finally, am I being kind? And these were written in the coffee shop on the wall. So people would not miss it. They'd come in and they'd see it right away. So especially somebody who came in there for the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually the proprietor says that he the kid says, I imagine people spend a lot of time. He was looking at it. And he said, I imagine people spend a lot of time looking at that. And the proprietor said, well, people who come back more than once generally do. And he said, I can tell who's going to come back by who spends time looking at those for a while, thinking about them, right. that it touches something in them. And then he goes on and he meets people within the coffee shop. There's a lot of discussion.
It's not a regular like Starbucks, with the sterile, lighting and so forth. And, and crazy noise. We're new. It's like
It's
a nice little home.
It's a nice little home. It's set up as being a home. It's got like a little living room with a couch, and then it's got a patio with a fountain and hummingbirds and flowers and comfortable comfortable chairs to sit in, and a bookshelf. It's not a big. It's like a library / bookstore where you could buy the book or borrow it. With one of the points that the owner of the bookstore makes, or of the coffee shop makes, is that often when you ask a question, the answer will show up sometime later, and a lot of times it shows up in a book that you read right afterwards. If you're into reading books, it'll show up in some way. That answer will show up, and so I think that's kind of the basis of that coffee shop is
it's almost like a premonition, that it's a foretelling of what's going to happen, or is it now that you're keenly aware, right? After being
we could have that discussion deeply about what that is.
And then it opens, right? Does it open up your lens?
Does it open up? Because we've all had the experience of buying a new car, and then all of a sudden you notice that everybody else in the world has that car.
Or you're shopping for that car.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, oh, there's one. They're all the same color I want. Wow, that's so great. And that's obviously not something that's showing up. It's just your lens got opened up.
Right.
But then there's the times when you go, I don't know. And by the way, that's the basis for the book I'm working on right now.
So you're talking about the mystical end of it, the magical, piece of life, that we all do that. We say, whoa, it's either like, okay, I've seen that before, or I've been here before, or I thought that, or did that happen before? Almost a Matrix play.
Let me tell you a story. Yeah, almost a Matrix play. So the book I'm working on has that, and we'll come back to that. But so I don't know how long ago, 10, 15 years ago, I'm driving down the freeway. It's a winter day. It's January. I'm driving actually up Highway 680, coming back towards our house. And I look over to the west, and just above the mountains, there's 3 suns right in a row on the sky. Boom, boom, boom. 3 round dots. A big one in the middle and 2 small ones on the side, and they're round dots. I mean, they're.
So you're not looking. You're looking through a clear window.
I'm looking through a clear. Okay, so then this is what I'm doing. Is I'm looking at it, I'm going,
yeah,
okay, and then I go back and I'm driving, so okay,
yeah,
and I go, yep, it's still there. Okay, and I did. I rolled down the window. I go, yep, it's still there. Right. I take off my glasses, my sunglasses.
Right. It's not a reflection.
It's like, what is it? Is it this polarized sunglasses? Nope, it's still there. I'm driving. I go, what the heck is that? I go, 3 suns in the sky. And I go, it's got to be a refraction thing. I mean, because here's my engineer brain working, right? It's got to be a refraction thing. It's got to be some weird thing with the angle and with the, and I go, I have no idea. So, okay, I know it was a long time ago because it was before the internet. It was before I could go on Google.
Because we would have done that.
Because I would Google it. I would have gotten home and I would have gone, what is 3 suns in the sky?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't do that. So I get home and I'm having dinner. I tell my wife, weirdest thing happened to me today. I saw 3 suns in the sky, big one in the middle, 2 small ones. It's got to be a refraction thing, but I have no way of figuring out what it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll call an observatory or something like that. Because back in the olden days, that's what we used to do. Yes. Is you call up and you go, hey, I know this is a stupid question, but you can answer it. And we're like, that's weird. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Okay, so then we go about the rest of our evening.
Yeah. What? Something got you? Okay, I could.
We get into bed that night.
Yeah.
I just started a new book.
Oh my God.
The day before, we get into bed. She pops her book up. I pop my book up. I open up to the first page, and this guy says, "I walked out this morning to feed the chickens, and there on the horizon was a sundog. I had never seen a sundog before in my life."
Ah, sundog.
I go, wow. So okay. So now you got to put that into a little bit of a strange place, right?
Huge.
You've got to put that into
right.
It's synchronicity. I don't know.
Right. That's amazing.
And that was like I opened the book, it had the answer to that question I've been asking. It usually isn't quite that
right there, staring at you.
right there,
Yeah.
but
Wow, that's amazing.
And so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not even gonna try and give the answer, but it was like right there, boom. It was.
Well, that's the one where you go to Vegas right away.
Yeah.
You got something here.
You go. I want to know which number I should put it on.
Right.
Oh, look, it's page 37.
That's right.
Red.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'll tell you.
So. So yeah. What got us started? Oh, the idea of that within the coffee shop. Yeah.
So he's struggling with his job, and there's something going on with his relationship with his girlfriend,
and just
but that's a huge break. He has this breakthrough with that. He meets some people there, and there's a common thread with the people that are in the shop that come there on a regular basis.
Yeah.
What was that?
They're thinking about the meaning of life. They're thinking about
those three
deeper
points.
questions,
right?
And those 3 questions.
Now wait a minute. Let's talk about that for a minute, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Because you have that in the book, all right? But those are yours. Those are your points. Are those 3 questions something that you ponder on a regular basis?
Yes.
Yeah. And are those foundational to your belief structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so again, another story.
That's beautiful, man.
Another story. We live in California. In California, there are earthquakes. There's a lot of things you need to do to be ready for an earthquake. You need to make sure that you're going to have 2 weeks worth of food. You have water for 2 weeks. That you have all the stuff that could fall on you off the walls. Attached to the wall, your TV's got to be attached to the wall. You've got to have, if you have a big bookshelf, attach that. There's a lot of things to do. And it needs to be checked on a regular basis because, you can have a big box full of food and then you go and you check it and you're like, oh, that went moldy or whatever,
Yep. Yep.
So I've gotten I've kind of set myself a routine so that when there's an earthquake someplace else in the world, when you hear about an earthquake in Italy and you go, oh, that's awful. You go, okay, well, I better go take care of one more thing for the earthquake.
So that's a heads up for you to check your supplies. Check your
heads up for me. When there's an earthquake in Chile, you do the same thing. It's just a reminder.
Sure.
Go back and check it. And now, if I were to think about my house, I'd say, yeah, I'm pretty well set up. I mean, we're attached to the foundation, all the things you have to do. I think that question, if I died today, what would I regret?
Yeah.
Is a similar type of thing. It's a thing where you, I kind of do that when somebody I know dies, so it's happening more often now.
Right.
But I take a second and I stop and I go, okay, what would I do if that were me? What and you're dead, so it doesn't matter. But if I were to know that I was dying right now, would I go, oh, I wish that I had spent more time with my kids.
Yeah.
Or I wish that I'd made up with my friend who I've been fighting with, that I kept on putting off. Or
make amends.
Yeah. Or I wish, or any number of things, any number of wishes that you might have.
Well, there's a common phrase that nobody wishes to have the stash of money they collected over their lifetime buried with them in the grave.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wish
your dying breath.
I wish I'd given more things away. I wish I'd, and so I guess that's what it is it's a question you need to ask yourself regularly. And sometimes you can do it when somebody dies.
Well, and part of it too is I think most of us have the sense that we're going to live to a ripe old age with all our facilities, our faculties, and and just fall asleep and die. And that often doesn't happen. That it can hit us at any time, and taking inventory and then acting on that. So that person that you've neglected,
right?
Pick up the phone, text them,
well,
have a lunch with them, do something, make
or
amends.
Or even something as simple as, I've been working so hard to make money that I've been neglecting this other piece of my life. If I were to die today, would I say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have spent that much effort and brain power making money, and should I have spent some of that time going to my kid's baseball game?
Right.
You know,
and those are things you can't retrieve.
You can't retrieve.
So then, what do you do? You know, and that's the thing of, okay, now what can I do? Now my child's older, and it still gives you an opportunity to shift.
So in this moment, you look at it. So that's why that question is there, because in this moment,
Huge.
Look at it and say, what would I regret, and then start working towards changing it.
Yeah.
So that's and I do that all the time. And I'm always looking at it.
Well, you know, it is an impact, and I actually quite literally just finished this book last night.
Good for you.
I went. I had to go this morning. I had to pick up one extra thing that I needed for my setup this morning.
Yeah.
And at this particular store, I had to hunt around for that particular item, and I did find it. The person that worked there helped me find it, and then we just had a quick chat at the checkout. And because today is actually the first full day of daylight savings.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, I said, was it okay waking up this morning with daylight savings? And then we got into that little conversation, and I learned a little bit about her, and that, she had talked to her granddaughter the night before and said, hey, we've got to get ready to go to bed. I asked her how old her granddaughter was. She said she's 17. I said, yeah, she's been through a few of these before, but every year it seems like it's fresh and different again for us, because, for me, I stayed up too late last night because we lost the hour.
Yeah.
Where I usually would go to bed at a certain time. Well, now it's an hour later, and you kind of forget that. But it was fun to have that conversation. And when I left the store, there was a gentleman at the exit, and they normally have a name badge on, and he had his name badge hidden. And I always love to just say, thank you so much. And I, say their name. Yeah. And I said, hey, where's your name tag? And he was, an older gentleman, and he took his name tag out. And I said, you have a beautiful, it was a different, unusual name. She said, you have a beautiful name. And I said his name, and he just had this beaming smile. And it's that thing of kindness. I'm going to that thing. So I had 2 opportunities this morning even to just really share something of kindness. And it helps the person, and it helps yourself.
And again, a line from Darker Than the Sky is they're sitting around the campfire. They're talking about an older man who had an influence on the main character's life. And they're sitting around the campfire, and he goes, I wish I'd gotten a chance to go back and thank him for that. I don't know, and then the other guy says he knew what he meant to you in your life, not having a dad. And then he says, yeah, but sometimes you don't realize until somebody comes back and tells you what that small kindness that you did meant to them.
Right.
And that exactly what you were doing this morning, with talking to the person, interacting a little bit. She may have been having a bad day, and people are just throwing things at her, and then for you to stop and acknowledge that she's a person, that may have just made her day.
It's the connecting on a human level.
Yeah. And
I think now, especially in our society, we tend to interact in a clinical way. It's either text. It's really hard. I've fallen into a trap as well of texting instead of calling.
Oh yeah.
We went from, knocking on somebody's door and knowing all the people in your neighborhood.
We just used to show up and just go, what's up?
Yeah. And everybody now it's funny because we've said this years ago that, the advent of not knowing your neighbor so well is when we had the automatic garage door opener.
Oh yeah.
And before that, we would have to pull that garage door open.
Get out of your car, wave at your neighbor.
And your neighbors, or, Joe next door would say, hey, Mike, you need some help with that garage door? And it's like, looks like that spring's getting a little bit old on that side. And it was. Yeah. And that was a big shift. That was one of those shifts. And of course, answering machines. They started with the tape recording answering machines. Then there were digital, your home answering machines. And so that thing of, it was great because you could leave a message, but it was not so great because you were kind of like stealthily, I'll leave a message at 3 o'clock. I know they're not home yet, so I don't have to talk to them.
Yeah.
Somebody that you don't want
Yeah.
to talk to.
Yeah.
So all these things that impact our connecting, on that human level. And every study shows that you need to have that connectivity.
You need to have it.
Humans need that. They thrive. They thirst for that.
And again, that's kind of being aware. It's that thing of in a micro moment being aware of,
Well, and I want to thank you because that pulled it out of me.
Yeah.
It goes in, for me, it goes into dormant stage.
Yes.
It's there.
Yes.
And you kind of like get caught, I got to do this, I got to do this. And you're kind of like put the blinders on. It's like, wait a minute, slow it down a little bit. There's a great story about your mom that I know. And she would go to stores and it would be that she needs to go in and get a quick, maybe a gallon of milk.
Yeah.
And it should take 2 minutes. Okay. And she would take a half hour because she's talking to so many people and connecting.
That was back in the day when you would leave your kids alone in the car.
That's right.
So
that's right.
She'd go, I just got to go in and get some milk. You guys stay in the car. Yeah. The windows roll. Well, you didn't have to, it was like this. So you could roll down the windows if you want, sit in the car.
Yeah.
So we'd be sitting in the car and she would be, where's mom?
Yeah.
She met somebody.
Yeah.
And what she would do is she would start an interaction with them, just a little interaction. Mm-hmm. And then she would ask that next question. Mm-hmm. And when she asked the next question, people would just open up to her.
She would have had a great podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness. Yes.
She talks with Louise.
Talks with. Yeah.
Oh,
She had a way of asking that next question, and people would know that she cared, and they would just, and she couldn't leave them. I mean, she didn't want to leave.
No.
I think she loved that.
Yeah. How do you end it?
Yeah. But we just knew.
Beautiful stuff. Beautiful. No,
and then she'd make a new friend too.
Yeah, and I'm not here to push your books, but that's a fun read, and it's a quick read. You can read it in one sitting.
We're here to push my books. Come on.
It moves very quickly. No, it's a great book. But let's go to this beast here. Matt, I've known you for a lot of years, and I was really just blown away by the detail that you put through. I want to ask you, because you talk about, and this is a beautiful photograph here with the trail structure of the Big Sur region, right? Carmel Valley, Big Sur, the hills around that area. How did you get the finite detail of the trails and just the environment there, the ecosystem and the weather patterns and so forth? Go into that.
It started off with a love of California. I broadened it out a little bit of a love of nature, a love of.
Well, you grew up in California.
I grew up in California.
In fact, you were the first baby somewhere.
I was the first baby born in Canoga Park Hospital
in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles. I had my 15 minutes of fame when I was
very early,
0 years old.
Picture in the paper.
Picture in the paper. Picture in the paper. Me and my mom.
Like my goodness.
Matt Tracy, the first baby born in Canoga Park Hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. No. And I grew up tramping in the hills, riding horses with my friend in the hills, and noticing the details. And I think I was just kind of in my mind. I was kind of popping to a little connection there. Is almost like love is noticing the details. If you think, and I'm trying to go to an analogy. I'm doing this on the fly here.
No, it's good. That's the idea.
if you're thinking about, you just met somebody and you're like, I think I don't know, I love them. And you notice their lips and their ears and their nose and their hair and their smell and as you notice it and you enjoy it, you get more in love. And that's.
Were you in scouting or did you camp early with the family? Where did this love for the outdoors come from?
My parents were not campers.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we want to sleep on a bed. We don't want to sleep on the ground. And besides, we had 6 kids. How much work is that? So they were like, no, we're going to a motel. But we did go for hikes. And I think I just always went with my friends. My friends and I would go and do things. One of my buddies in high school and in college, actually, we would. It sounds kind of crazy at the time, but basically we would decide we're going to go from here to there, and we're not going to go on the trails.
Oh boy.
We would just bushwhack.
Wow. Yeah.
We would bushwhack across,
Wow.
and you'd come out and you'd just feel all scratched.
Did you ever
up
get poison oak? Or
Oh yeah. I got poison oak, but
then you get an immunity. You get a resistance.
it gets less every time.
Right.
Usually, some people it gets worse every time, but generally it gets less every time, and the appreciation for that.
Did they have an appreciation for the outdoors as well in the same way?
Yeah.
So you had that bond of let's go, let's do it. Wow.
We were.
At what age are you talking about?
Oh, high school.
Yeah.
Some high school, some college. I got more friends in college that would like to go camping and stuff like that. So really, the camping and stuff.
So you picked it up.
Showed up. Yeah. But then I think you could be out there doing all that and not notice the details and not notice, not care about the things. And so there's a lot of things that I'm just like,
Well, we also grew up in an era where we didn't have the cell phone. You'd go out there, and then you were there. You were immersed, right, in the environment. You weren't looking for, gosh, I don't have reception here. Right?
And so a lot of what I'm writing in that book, of course, it's personal. When I'm talking about poison oak being beautiful, I think poison oak is beautiful. I think poison oak is a great plant, except for the fact that it's poison. But it's shiny and green in the springtime, and it has little flowers, and then in the late summer it turns this beautiful red. It's climbing up trees, and it has little berries on it. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant, except for the fact that it's poisonous.
Right.
So so
that's a survival mechanism for it, right?
A lot of those details come from a love of it, love of the.
Now I'm going to ask you a question about that, because it's almost like I could read that book and go, okay, and you name the trails. Yeah. Do those trails exist, or is that just hypothetical? Are those, or not hypothetical, but are those fictional trails, or a combination of them?
Combination.
Yeah.
I couldn't make the story work on the exact trails that I wanted to, but they're really close.
So when you read this book, don't expect to read and look for every trailhead.
No, and actually, if you go on Google and you search for Pinyon Peak, you get a mountain that's actually right near Carmel Valley. Yeah. It's right near civilization, and there's actually another Pinyon Peak there is out there that's down further south too. And
it's not Pinyon Peak 1 or 2. They just who is Pinyon? There's
2 Pinyon Peaks.
Yeah, maybe the husband.
Pine tree. It's a
pinyon
pinions.
Tree. Yeah.
And
you know more than I do.
And so it's the further south Pinyon Peak, but yeah. So there are things there. There's a lot of actual things there, but I realized I couldn't hew to the exact.
Okay, there's another spot. It's a fascinating book where the protagonist goes to Chicago.
Yeah.
To have a reunion.
Yeah.
With family, and it's heart-wrenching, but there's a point where there's some kind of an amusement park.
Right.
Is that a real thing?
That's a real amusement park.
Is it still existing today?
No.
Okay.
That's a real. I think there's condos there now. Oh. There was a real amusement park that was there in the time. So yes, the amusement park was real. The truck he was driving, the roads he was driving, those were all real. And I tried to as much as I could. A lot of the details about Northern California, about the logging and that he did before he went out to Chicago. The whole
Eureka area there.
All the roller coasters and stuff. Those were real roller coasters.
You brought everything to life. You brought every detail of every town, including Oakland. It's profiled in there early on in his life, to such a rich detail.
Oakland,
really
Big Sur, Eureka, Chicago,
Monterey,
Carmel Valley, and it's within the structure of the plot. I'll admit it. I grew up on Louis L'Amour. I love a Louis L'Amour because Louis L'Amour moves fast. He keeps the plot moving.
I saw something that you put on your Amazon profile.
Yeah.
That you wrote there, and
Yeah.
you've how many books did he write?
Like 150.
And you've read
I read
every
them
single
all.
one
More
than once.
Yeah. When I was in college, I used to go to the used bookstore. I would start pulling out books, and I'd say, "Oh, I need to read that book. That looks good." And so I'd get, Humboldt's Gift by Saul Bellow, and I go, "I need to read that." And then I'd go and I'd get another book that looked good, and I'd get another literature book. I used to love
So some heavy, serious books.
Somerset Maugham, Graham Greene, those guys, and I was really into those guys during college, reading them, and
then there was Louis L'Amour.
And then there was always a Louis L'Amour. There was always one or two Louis L'Amours because I'd get my stack of books and
they're well priced in the used bookstore.
Yeah, half price.
Yeah,
and then I'd get back home and I'd go, okay, I'd spread them out. Which am I going to read? I'd always pick the Louis first because it's like that just feels good. And, it's going to be a nice story. Yeah. And really, that was what I wanted to have, was a story that you could read and go, it's just a good story. Mm-hmm. It's just a good story. Mm-hmm. And then, unlike Louis, although I can go back, Louis has a little bit of depth, but not a lot. But unlike Louis, I wanted to have more depth, and that comes back with that theme of going from Happy Here and Now to Meaning of Life Coffee Shop to Darker Than the Sky.
Yeah. Character development, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go deep in that. Yeah.
My favorite character in that book is Russ, the guy who he shows up in different places throughout the book, and you're just never sure if he's good or bad. You just don't know.
Well,
he's bad,
and I'm not going to give it. He's done bad things.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to give it away because, you, like I say, and do not skip to the last chapter. But there is a point there, and I don't want you to answer it, but there's something about what will he get at the end?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to leave it at that. What will he get? He's earned something huge.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. We'll probably talk off camera about that.
Yeah.
What your sense is, because, neither of us really know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what it could go many different ways on this. And that's I think the way you ended that thing was amazing. So I'm reading this book, Matt, and we're kind of circling around, we're weaving, we're digressing, we're circling, and I've known Matt for years. I'm actually married to Matt's sister, so I've known you for more than 40 years. And just about every page reading this, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, this is Matt Tracy. This is the Matt I've known for all these years, and I don't think I never saw you with that Mazda. You had a little Mazda when you were in college at UC Santa Barbara, right? And the only thing that I remember you telling me is that you got the longest legs ever. You're 6'7". 6'7". And
I'm sticking to it too. I don't care what you say. I'm still 6'7".
I said to you yesterday, as we get older, our spines compress, because when I go to my annual physical, at my peak, I was 6'3.5". And it just burned me that I never got to 6'4".
I know. And that's where I wanted to stop too. I want to be 6'4".
Right. I never got to 6'4". I got 6'3.5". And I do in the doctor's office, stretching.
Like pushing the hair
up. And the
up.
assistant is like, what? Just thinking to herself, what's this guy doing? And I'd tell him, and I was always honest. I always took my shoes off.
Yeah.
And some of them would let you keep your shoes on. I said, no, I can't do that. I can't cheat.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. And then the last time I went, I was 6'3".
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course, your feet are flattening. I'm out on the playground all day long. What I do for a living.
You're kind of short now. You know that?
And every time I see you, you're still taller. But I digress. But my point being, I'm looking at this book and reading it, and I'm going, and I'm going to ask you point blank, did you really write this? Because the Matt Tracy, this is the hidden part of Matt. The self-help stuff, I can see it.
Because I like to tell people what to do.
I've talked to you for decades about stuff.
I'm a know-it-all, right? So I'm a know-it-all.
You like to share a lot. We do. We go back and forth for years, and leading up to this sit down, I said, Matt, just play this like we've done for years.
Yeah.
We'd sit around in the sun and do a barbecue later on and just talk for hours, and then all of a sudden, your wife or mine, your sister, my wife, saying, "Come in, it's snack time" or something, and we're going like 2-3 hours later.
Yeah.
So we're just doing, and we're just documenting what we would normally do anyway. So this is all good, but I mean that with all sincerity and admiration that you wrote something really special here, and I don't know how you're ever going to beat this. So maybe you should stop. I'm just kidding.
I think the part that I'm proudest of is the depth.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a good story. It's a nice story. It keeps on going. What I'm proudest of is the depth. And my neighbor, my neighbor's the daughter of my neighbor. She's in her 20s. Is off in China right now on an adventure. And she emailed me and she said, "Hey, I haven't read your book yet." And she said, "Do you have a PDF of it?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Yeah. Boop, I sent her the PDF. Off it goes.
Yeah.
3 days later, she's like, "I read your book. I finished it all in 3 days. I'm like, really good." I'm like, "Cool. All right." And then like 2 days later, I get another email from her. And she says, "Matt, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've taken your book, the PDF, and I've highlighted in 3 different colors. And the first color is the words I didn't know." Oh. So there's that. She didn't know manzanita. I don't know. Not from California, maybe. But the words I didn't know. And the second color was the phrases that I thought were especially beautiful. And the third color was the parts that really felt like wisdom that I felt in my heart. And
that's great. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, I know. And she wasn't even sure that she should be doing this. She felt like she wasn't. Yeah, she's in her 20s. Yeah. She wasn't sure that was an appropriate thing to do.
It's hers.
And I was like, no, this. I read through it, and she was like, she had highlighted the most important parts to me. You know, she had highlighted the part where Van says, you never know until later what that might have meant to somebody. She highlighted the part where Van learned early in his life that he wasn't his anger or his emotions, that he was that being watching it, and he could be a little bit separate from it, and that helped him in the time after his dad died. And she highlighted, just really the parts where it was like, oh, you have to live your own life. You can't let somebody else tell you what to do. You know, and that I didn't say it quite right, but within the scope of that, and that's a theme that goes through with Van's son. And I emailed her right back. I'm like, no, this is a gift to me. And again, that goes back to that thing. If you don't know, if she had just sent it out and I hadn't given her back, she would have said, well, I don't know how anybody felt about that. But it was a gift to me to have somebody else say to me, I just touched my microphone, to have somebody else say to me, I saw what you were doing and I appreciated it. Yeah. That was a gift.
Well, absolutely. And that's the thing, in our, where we are now in this world, that we can communicate that way. You're the writer. You send her a file. She's in China. She's highlighting the file. It's not even a hard copy, because we've all done that for years. Your favorite, you're going to take a highlighter. You're going to put little notes on the margin, right?
Yeah.
And it's
little
yours,
piece of paper in
right?
there.
But you never get back to the author.
Yeah.
It's kind of like with me as a teacher, where I'll have a student, that the highest grade I teach is 5th grade, and 4 years later, when they're in high school, they come back, and they're picking up their brother or sister, or they're just coming through, and it happens every year. And they'll say, "Mr. Vickers, nice to see you. Hey, I remember that, that you told me that it was going to be a real challenge when I get to middle school, that I'm going to have 6 teachers. I'm not just going to have my regular teacher." And that was really helpful. It really helped me a lot. And that's that thing of, I have that opportunity occasionally to have somebody come back and just kind of, thank me for that. And here you have a young person, that obviously you impacted her with the writing, and that you're able to then, she actually sent it back to you to see it.
And then I was able to send it back to her and say, no, this is valuable.
Right.
This is amazing that you did that. You are an amazing person for
Yes.
doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that positive feedback,
Yes.
real genuine positive feedback
Yes.
goes back and forth and
That's-
back and forth.
Well,
and
that's
when
the
that
kindness.
happens,
That's the kindness.
when that
play.
happens, that's a gorgeous thing.
It is, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's a human connection.
Yeah.
You made a really good connection that way. Great stuff. I've got a cheat sheet here.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some great stuff here. We've talked about a few things here. I want to go into your adventure play. That now, was this during your undergraduate time that you would go to Alaska and do work up there? Was that during that time, or was it after college?
That was
your,
after college.
your undergraduate degree, and so you have a degree in mechanical engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and then your senior year at UCSB, and everything that I've talked to my two kids about when they were, going to school and colleges is, hey, that last, your junior, senior year, that's the time you really have to start making your connections. You're still in school. People don't see you as a threat. That if you're doing an informational interview or you want to learn more about something, that you can connect that way. What was your path, your junior, senior year, as you were getting ready, so that you didn't just, or did you just graduate and say, what's next? Or did you have a plan already set up?
I'm going to go back a little ways on this because
well, you were an entrepreneur from way back.
Right. Well, yeah.
From
way back, I had a fence business. Me and my buddy used to go in the hills. Me and my buddy had a fence business when we were in high school.
And what did you make? Just were like cattle guard fences, things like that, or what kind of fences were you making?
Mainly they were like pole fences, like kind of cattle guard fences, because he had horses and they had one made, and I was like, this is a cool business. How can we get into this? And we started doing that. And I had been washing windows and
that's in high school.
That was in high school, yeah. And washing windows in high school, and then in college, I did a lot of painting because back in the day you could make $5 an hour working in a liquor store someplace, and I could make $25 an hour painting. So it just didn't make any sense to me to do that.
So painting homes,
yeah,
or apartments, things like that.
Yeah, I actually had a guy. I ended up putting ads out, and a guy picked up my ad that had a bunch of apartment buildings, and he would call me up and he would go, okay, that apartment's empty, go buy the paint it, send me the bill. And I would show up there on a Saturday morning with a 6-pack of Diet Pepsi and my lunch, and I would just get to work and paint a 2-bedroom apartment. It was always the same color, so it was easy. Paint a 2-bedroom apartment in one day. Just flying, just working, sweating, drinking. But early on in college, there was a guy in I think I was a freshman year. I needed a new stereo. I needed a tape deck or something like that. And there was an ad in the student newspaper.
Wait a minute. Time out. A tape deck. A lot of these young folks, tape deck, okay?
Back in the day,
we're talking about
little
cassettes,
and then you take a pencil. The tape would get loose. You take a pencil and you stick it in there so you could tighten it up before you pop in. Well, actually, what I needed was a double tape deck, because all the people in the dorms had all these things on cassette, and it was good music. And if you had a double cassette deck, you could pop their cassette in and it would tape it onto this other cassette, and then you'd have their music too.
Copy it.
Early pirating.
That's right. That's right.
But I needed to buy one, so there was an ad for Stereo Stew in the newspaper, and Stereo Stew had a business where he would, where he would, you knew what you wanted, he'd go and he had his place was where he'd buy it, brand new equipment, and it would come and he would then sell it to you for less than you could get at a stereo store with all the markup of the stereo stores. Cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
And I did that, and I was like, that's good business. Yeah. And so then towards the end of the year, I went to Stereo Stew, and I go, hey, are you graduating anytime soon? He said, yeah, I'm graduating pretty soon. I said, I want your business. So I gave him some money for the business, and I started Matt's Music the next year. So I had Matt's Music.
How'd you advertise that?
In the student newspaper.
Yeah. Same. So Stu's
the Santa Barbara Nexus, I think it was called. So a little ad, and then people would call up, and they always thought that it was like, $10 did you steal it off the back of a truck? I'm like, no, this is legit.
Yeah.
This is legit. This is all legit. You figure out what you want. I'll buy it for you. And then as an added thing, I would set it up for
Set
them.
it up. That's huge.
Because it was, once you've done it a couple times, it's easy, but it's the first time it's hard.
Right.
So there was this guy who bought a stereo from me, and I went to his house and set it up. And he was an older guy. I mean, he must have been like ancient 40 or something like that.
Right.
And I'm talking to him, and he goes, "Yeah, I work at this disk drive company in Goleta." And I go, "Oh, that's cool." So I asked him a couple more questions, and I'm done, and he's happy. And
So
then,
early technology.
oh yeah. This was when they were first starting to get the disk drive heads that were made from silicon wafers instead of made the other way they did, instead of putting things on tape. So then, like the end of my sophomore year, I'm like, I need to get a internship somewhere. So I called him up. His name was George.
So right as you're entering your junior year.
Yeah.
So that's his answer to the question.
In the summertime.
Yes, you did have a plan.
So in the summertime, I
How
call
about
him
you?
up. I go, "Hey, George,
Yeah.
this is Matt Tracy from Matt's Music." He goes,
Yeah.
"Hey, Matt, what's up?
Yeah.
You work at that disk drive place, don't you?" "Yeah." "Is there any chance they have a summer internship?" He's like, "Well, I happen to be head of engineering at this disk drive
And
place.
you're an engineering student.
And I'm an engineering student." I go, "Yeah, and?" And he goes, "Yeah, we can do it." So he set up a whole internship for me. So I did an internship with
So
him.
let's stop on that for a minute. You took an existing connection that you had,
Yeah.
and you made a contact.
Yeah.
You stepped up.
I just called him. Yeah.
You could have had that. See, did you have that voice in you back then? You didn't, or was it so? Was it? Do you have that confidence that says, you know what? I'm a businessman. I'm doing this. I got this guy I did a good business with, right? And it's like, because there could have been that voice that says, no, I'm not good enough to do this.
There's something, and I
Was
see
that
it,
youthful exuberance?
I see it in Nate too. Is kind of just I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think at the time I knew that I was ignoring any voice or hearing any voice or anything. I couldn't tell you that.
Was it like,
I
let's just see what happens?
I just knew
Yeah.
that I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. And so many things when I was young, if I go back and I look at them and I go, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I did that.
You take the step to put yourself in the
I
position.
just said I'm going to go do it. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it was ignorance. Maybe it was. But anyway, so
Right.
for the next 2 summers, I had really good internships at this disk drive company.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into it. They were just good. I mean,
Yeah.
George set me up. George did a good
great.
job.
Thanks, George.
And then the next year, I'm coming around December or so, and I'm thinking about, well, what am I going to do after college? And I'm going, computers, I don't know. And I'm thinking, well, I could go work for George.
Yeah.
And then I saw an ad in the paper because again, back in the day, they used to be in the paper that was for this oceanographic company. And they wanted somebody to help them to put together these things they were putting together, just to come in and do some grunt work.
In that local community.
In the local community. Yeah, they were there in Goleta.
Okay.
Again. And I went and I got that job and I did the work. I just was there. I was soldering some circuit boards to put in. Actually, these things I was making end up going into a larger story later. Mm-hmm. But I was making these big aluminum panels that were going to be used for their oceanographic work. And then that was a good job and everybody was happy and I was happy. I was getting paid pretty well. And then another month went by and I went back to my boss back there and I said, "Hey, I'm about to graduate. What do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think." And so they hired me. So oceanographic company in Santa Barbara. But the majority of their work was doing ice work in Alaska. Wintertime oceanographic work in Alaska.
Wow.
And so I spent the next 2 years going back and forth to Alaska, having adventures.
So your home base would still be in the Santa Barbara area, but you would go talk about radical, climate differential. Oh my gosh.
So the
Holy
weirdest
smoke.
thing, and we can talk about some of some of the stories of being there, but the strangest thing was, first, you go to Alaska in the wintertime, and you feel like an itch on your ear or something like that. And if you're here, you think maybe that's a bug or something like that, or you know, it's cold there. There aren't any bugs there. So
Yeah.
if there's an itch, it's not there.
Oh.
And there aren't any plants. There's no smells of that. The only smells there really are like, you know, man-made smells. So there's diesel smells.
Mhm.
There's, you know, so actually if I'm in a cold, I did this. I was back visiting my daughter in Boston, and a diesel truck started up, and I had a little
Brought back.
Alaska flashback.
Wow.
And
That's not bad.
then you'd fly back and come into Santa Barbara Airport, and Santa Barbara Airport has flowers all over the place around it. So you'd walk off the plane after being in basically a sterile atmosphere, and you'd walk into
Overwhelmed.
paradise.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the flowers, the warmth.
Yeah.
I came back from my first time in Alaska, and it was probably, you know, a 50-degree day outside, and the wind was blowing, and I'm walking around and going, the wind is warm. The wind is warm. This is amazing.
So did you prepare properly on that first season in Alaska as far as getting the right thermals, the gloves, everything that you needed? You had a list. Somebody gave you a list. Somebody said, "This is what we recommend."
They prepared us very well.
Okay, good.
They prepared me very well. You know, they had all the stuff, and
They had the gear.
They had the gear, and the gear that they didn't have.
Okay.
They said, you got to get this and you got to get that. So my first trip to Alaska was okay. So at the time, again, the work that these guys were getting was a lot for the oil companies, because the oil companies wanted to put drilling rigs in the middle of the ocean in Alaska, which sounds bad now, but it was cool work. And so Norton Sound, south of Nome, there's a big bay, Yukon River coming up here, the big river that's the hugest river coming in out of the mountains of Alaska, where all the gold came from, comes into Norton Sound, and Nome is on the north part of that. And Iditarod's going to come into this in a little bit. So Iditarod
It's part of the route.
is a race. It's on the race of Iditarod, and Iditarod started out with there was a plague in Nome. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something they needed a serum for, and there was a serum in Anchorage, and it was the middle of winter, and so these very brave people got on dog sleds and made the trip. It was like a 1,000-mile trip from Anchorage to Nome to bring the serum to Nome, and saved lots of lives.
Wow.
And then every year now they have the Iditarod dog race as a
celebration, a tribute,
celebration
and
race.
it's a major world event.
So we were there. We just happened to be there at the end of the 6 weeks that we spent there. The Iditarod came down the main street of Nome with all the dogs, finishing that up. So we were out there. We would every day get into a helicopter, fly out over the frozen bay, the sea ice south of Nome, and find a spot. Now the sea ice moves a lot around there, and that's why they wanted us there, was because they wanted to put something in the middle of that bay, and they wanted to know how fast the sea ice moved, and how strong it was, how thick it was, and so they could engineer their oil rig, to go in the middle of that thing.
But wait a minute. So they're going to drill into that ice, but the ice can be moving, shifting. What just?
They're going to drill into the ground below,
right
at the bottom of the sea.
Okay,
but they're worried about the ice floating on. So the ice isn't that thick in Norton Sound. The ice in Norton Sound is only maybe 3 feet thick, but it moves. It moves in the wind. Yeah. And the strangest thing. So I'm in a helicopter above it, and when you're looking down, if you didn't know about the continental drift theory, you would see it happening right there, because these plates of ice get either blown by the currents or by the wind, and they crash into each other. And sometimes they go under each other and they ride up. So you get these big chunks of ice going like this. And sometimes they crash into each other and they go like this, and they make mountain ranges. So that was what we were doing was we would come and land next to one that I remember was a 60-foot high mountain of ice rubble that had that basically continental drift theory happening right there in front of your, I mean, in real time, in front of your eyes, you'd see it. We'd land. Somebody would jump out of the helicopter with the helicopter still running and drill a hole in the ice just to make sure that you hadn't landed on a thin part. Drill a hole in the ice real quick. Okay, that's thick enough. Then they could turn off the helicopter. Wow. Then the whole crew of us would go out and we would drill holes in the ice, take core samples and pack them on dry so they could see how strong they were. Measure, do a whole measurement of the mountain range.
Planes. Let's talk about. There's something in your bio here that you talk about plane rescues.
Yeah. Okay. So let me kind of keep on going with this one a little bit. So we did that every day for 6 weeks. We were out there gathering data. So then we could bring that back and measuring the movement of how fast we had to put down machines that would measure how fast the ice was moving. The interesting thing was it was cold. It was generally. It wasn't as cold as it was later on when we went further to the north of Alaska, but it was 5 below every day. So I'm out there, in all the gear, the gloves, the face masks, the bunny boots. We called them bunny boots because they were like a double layer of rubber with felt in between them. That you look like Bugs Bunny with them on. And me and this other guy, he was a Canadian guy. I figured out why Canadians talk like this. They talk like this. They talk like this, because when you're cold out, you can't move your lips, so you talk like this, So we joke each other, and we're working out there. We're working hard, and one day it got up to about 5 degrees above, and we're big drilling holes in the ice, and you can't sweat. If you sweat in the freezing temperatures, then the sweat can freeze on you. So what you do is you always have to be taking off layers and putting on layers. Wow. So we're working and we're taking off layers. And we're getting down to our inner jacket. Then we're getting down to our sweatshirt. Then we're getting down to our t-shirt. Wow. And then it's a sunny day. There's no wind. It's 5 degrees above zero. Yeah. And we're working, and we're like, and we look at each other and go, I'm still hot. And he goes, I'm still hot too. I go, all right, here we go.
Just take your shirt off.
Took our shirt off. Wow. and so you get used to it really quickly. But yeah, it was an adventure. Yeah. So we had the only helicopter in the area, and we're just taking off one morning, and we're about to fly out to go look for another ice mountain to Scientific, and the helicopter pilot gets a call. Okay, yeah, I don't know how he would say it, but he's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Okay, we got to go back. All right, I hear you. Okay, so then he's like, okay, so there's a small plane. It's down on the ice. We got to go back and get some gasoline for it, and then we'll go land on the ice next to the small plane, and we will then allow him to put the gasoline into his plane. So we go back, get the gas, we come back out, we fly over there, and the Coast Guard's found the guy. So the Coast Guard's flying this C-130. It's a big red and white C-130, and the pilot of the C-130 is so that we can find him. He's flying over the guy at like about 50 feet above the ground, because it's ice, so it's very flat. So he's like, whoa. So we land, we come down. This C-130 just keeps on going above us, just coming, whoa, above us. And then it turns back around, comes back, whoa, above us. And so as we were coming in, I'm like, that plane is white. The whole plane was white.
Right.
We're like, he's smuggling something. He's got a white plane because he doesn't want to be seen. That's what he's doing. Well, he ran out of gas, the idiot.
So wait, he's flying and he lands. Is that what happened?
Well, the small plane. The small plane. Yeah, he ran out of gas. He landed on the ice. Wow. And then he called me and he was like, hey, you guys got to come rescue me. So that's why that C-130 is going over the top. Yep. Really cool. Wow. And so we go and we get out and we bring him the can of gasoline. Now, when you're working in Alaska and you're working for an oil company, you have to be very careful about anything that you would put as a contamination. Sometimes we would put antifreeze. Well, you put antifreeze into any engine you're using. You had to start a generator or something like that. If you spilled a little bit of antifreeze onto the snow, the foxes would eat it and it could kill them. That's not good.
Right.
So you'd be very careful about picking it up, put it into a plastic bag, zip it up, take it back with you, and dispose of it properly. If you spill a little bit of oil on the ice, anything like that. So we give this guy this 5-gallon can. He climbs up on his wing, and he's got a rag that he puts around the 5-gallon can. So he goes and he goes blah, 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 and then he gets down, and the rag is just completely soaked in gasoline, and he gets off and he goes on the ice.
Like, this is your gas that you provided.
Just give me the rag. And so then we're going and we're getting the shovel. So,
interesting contrast. Irresponsible, responsible.
Irresponsible, responsible. But it was fun,
so then he goes.
Then he just goes. He just
and that's it.
Just
Okay,
fires
guys,
it up,
bye.
and he's gone.
Wow. So it was an assumption that he was a smuggler. You didn't actually see any of the
No, I don't know what. But why would you have a white plane? Why would you have a white plane in the winter in the Arctic?
Yes,
you wouldn't.
Very dangerous.
So no, I don't know what that was. But no, that time was it was fun because it was doing things that I couldn't imagine doing a lot of times, and making big projects that were like, I don't know, how do you decide this is going to work? Well, let's just go and try and make it work, and we're going to, through force of our will, make it work. And
that left an imprint.
And dangerous.
Yeah.
I knew at the time it was really dangerous. I knew that the whole idea of working in the Arctic, helicopters are rated to fly at a minimum in minus 40 degree weather, and we flew them in minus 40 degree weather all the time. Wow. And there was one time where where we were working 12 miles north of the northernmost part of Alaska in the Bering Sea, where the sea ice is 10 feet thick. And we had a lot of stuff going on, but my job at the time was the helicopter was bringing in the stuff we needed. It was making trips back and forth and actually there was a barge out there that the oil company had made. It was an exploration drilling barge. And my job at the time was the helicopter was going to come down. It had a big load on a sling underneath it. And in that dry air, as it's coming down, if you touch the sling, the helicopter in the air is making a huge amount of static electricity. If you touch the sling before there's a rope that hangs down, before it actually touches the ground, you get knocked back. Wow. You get knocked over by the static electricity. So you have to wait until it touches the ground. So now we're in minus 40 degree temperatures. And the helicopter is making wind chill that's probably bringing it down to minus 100. Wow. I mean, I'm right underneath the helicopter. Oh. I know this is dangerous. Yeah. I've got to go underneath the thing. I've got to wait till the thing comes down. It sets it down. I've got to get up there and disconnect it, so then they can pull it up and go get another load. Yes. And there's like 3 or 4 helicopters coming in a row. They're just like bringing stuff in, dropping them off. I'm getting up there. I'm focusing. I'm fully. Yeah. I know this is dangerous. I'm fully focusing. Yeah. I'm doing it. I'm cold. Bomb, do next. Bomb, do next. And again, really cool in a way. For like a 23-year-old guy, it was like, this is physical. It's hard. Yeah. Focus, mental, really cool. I get done with the last one. I turn to the guy who's been out of the helicopter wash. I go, I'm freezing. I'm going inside. Yeah. I turn around. I walk towards the stairs of the to get up onto the barge, and there had been another research company that had dug a hole in the ice. There was like a 4x8 hole in the ice where they had put divers down it before, and to look at the underside of this exploratory barge they were doing. And then they had left it because at 40 below zero, that doesn't last long. Ice is going to be water for just a very short period of time, and then it's going to be ice. Right. I turned around and I walked towards the stairs, and I walked right into that hole because
What?
I was frozen, and I was like, I had gone from being
What?
high alert,
Oh man.
high alert,
Wow.
to being, okay, I'm off duty now, right?
Oh my
I'm off duty.
God.
All I got to do is get upstairs. Walked into it. Boom, boom, boom. Up to here in the freezing water, got myself back out. It was okay. It was okay. But, it's another one of those things where you're just, you just realize that it was dangerous. And I think, and again, I say that I say it in the book. It's like, you think you've made it when you reach the top of the mountain, but you got to get back down the mountain. And
This is almost like, the Alaska thing is almost like a whole nother storyline at some point you might want to explore.
there's a lot of stories in it, and I'm not sure exactly how to make it happen.
Oh, bar fights. We touched that at all?
Yeah.
You were involved in one or two? You can clean it up if you want.
Okay, so we've touched on the fact that I'm a big fella. I'm 6'7".
Yes, you are. And fit.
I have all my life.
Well, hold on. Work on that. I'm going to jump in real quick. You went to Duke University for your MBA.
Yeah.
And when you walked on campus, and Duke is a powerhouse in basketball, men's basketball. And what would you get on a regular basis? You're on the basketball team?
Again, I got that all my life.
Anyway, I wanted to put that in.
Oh, yeah. So what I've had all my life is I've had a certain there's a certain person who wants to have a fight with the biggest guy.
Oh.
And so
Napoleon complex?
Something. And so
they see you coming in.
So I usually just kind of just joke about it or something like that. Nome. It's a pretty rough Western town. It had dirt streets, and the odd thing was that the streets in Nome during the daytime, the sun would shine on them, and the vehicles would be running over it, and it'd warm up the dirt street enough so that it'd be muddy. And then at nighttime, it would freeze up again. And then when it froze, it got dusty. It was strange to think of that it would become like frozen dust.
Right.
Anyway, so at the end of working a 12-hour day out on the ice, just busting through things, we'd go out and get dinner and get a drink or something like that. So I walked into this bar, and there was a guy who was 5 feet tall, and he was drunk. Mm-hmm. And the second I walked in the bar, he's like, "I'm gonna fight you!" And he says, "Put him up!"
Oh.
And he started doing, and it was laughable because I was like, wait, and he's like, "Come on!" He's moving in towards me. I went, wait, and I put my hand on his forehead. I'm just, no. I'm gonna buy you a drink. He's like, "All right." So we went.
Well, and I'm just sitting here thinking you're already 6'7", and then with boots on, you're going to be at least a couple more inches taller.
Yeah,
so
and with all that bulk, I look big.
And you got a hat on. You look like you're 7 feet tall. Goodness gracious. Oh my God. That's a scene. I can see it there.
Yeah.
I can see a scene in the movie, which I could see a script for this too. But there's a lot here.
No, that was a good time. I think that, young men need something a little bit dangerous and a little bit, just hard to do. I think dangerous. I think a little bit dangerous. And I felt like that was a good thing to do for a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah. I went one time. I got a call. I was in Santa Barbara, and I got a call. No, one of the guys that was up there got sick. You've got to go. All right. So I packed up. I'm out the next day, and get on the plane.
How many guys were on the crew?
The whole company was 30 or 40 people, and probably 20 of them would be actually up there at any one time. I mean,
and then when you went up, you would go for not including this, time, but you'd be there for months at a time.
Yeah, well, the one time we were there for 6 weeks. When we were in Nome, it was 4 weeks when I was up, with the helicopter thing. 4 weeks again, I went back to the same place for another 4 weeks, and then this one, I was up there for 3 weeks. The spur of the moment one where I just went up. I had no idea where I was going. I was just like, get on a plane, go.
Yeah.
So I go and I show up and I get to the airport, and the guy meets me at the airport, and he says, yeah, we've been out working on the ice, and we've had polar bears coming through the camp every single day.
Wow.
Every single day there's a polar bear coming through the camp.
So wait a minute. Stay on that. It's not like the Coca-Cola commercials with the polar bears.
No, polar bears are apex predators. They are
Apex.
Check me if I'm wrong. They are the only animal that will actually prey on a human being. Other big predators will. They could hurt you but polar bears will actively hunt you and try to kill you to eat you.
Right.
And so they always had a polar bear hunter. They always had a guy with a gun just in case. I mean, you hope that you get away, you see him in time or something. But worst case scenario, they had a guy with a high-powered rifle that was always there watching.
Right.
So he's like, there's been polar bears coming through here all the time. Wow. Oh, by the way, your job is going to be, we've got this 100-yard square marked out, and we're trying to map the bottom of the ocean in this 100-yard square. So you've got to go around, you've got to drill holes in the ice and drop down these measurement tools on the bottom. Take some soil sample and stuff like that, and you're going to be 150 feet away from the polar bear hunter that's standing on the chunk of ice in the middle there. You're going to be out there, and I'm like,
wow.
Okay, so how often are these polar bears coming through? Every day. They're coming through every day. So just be ready, and be ready for what? What am I going to do? I don't know.
You yell out.
But I'm here. I can't do anything. So we're out there, me and this other guy, and we're drilling holes. I was there for 3 weeks and never saw a polar bear.
Wow.
I don't know. I have polar bear repellent.
They looked at, well, you're 6'7".
They did. They were like,
he's almost as tall as us. He's different. Let's just leave him alone. Oh my gosh. This has been fascinating. I think this is probably a good break point.
Good idea.
And I just want to touch real quick. You have, and this can go a little bit, you have a couple of new projects.
Yes.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. So how do you do that? How do you shift? Because I'm assuming they're totally different. How do you shift, and when do the discipline of, when you're working on one, and then do you need a break time? Tell me more about how you're managing this. 2 books.
Writing is a weird thing because, you hear about writer's block and you hear about...
Do you get that?
Let me start with saying no. But so writing all these books, they were relatively easy. I'm not easy, but you're working and I had an idea of where I was going, and I felt strong about it. And I would sit down, especially for Darker Than the Sky, I would go, I want to write a scene where where he arrives in Eureka and he gets dropped off by a semi truck on the side of the road because he's been hitchhiking, and I want to write that scene. And he meets some people. Okay, so then I'll just sit down and I have an idea of what the scene looks like, right. and then I just start writing the scene.
Yeah,
and it's relatively straightforward. It's a.
Did you have the whole book already in mind, or did it develop over time?
It developed. I had an idea of
the rough sketch
of the plot, but I didn't. I really had to do some moving around of the pieces to make this book work, and truthfully, it didn't come together in its present form until very late. I mean, I had all the pieces, and I kept on trying because part of the book is talking about Van's early life and why he has some of the thoughts he has, and then there's part of the book that's talking about what happens, when they go in their adventure into Big Sur, and I wrote the adventure in Big Sur first, and I wanted to go into the early life, and then the early life was if I just put it in the beginning, it didn't have much pull. And so I ended up coming with kind of a flashback idea, and it worked. By the time I thought of it, I was all done with all the writing. I had done a lot of rewriting, and I said, oh, this is how it's going to work. And then I was able to make it work naturally within the context. As you know, he goes back to get his dad's map, and that he's kind of forgotten about, and he goes and he gets it, and then he starts thinking about how that map came, and then I kind of did a flashback about, you know, when his dad's friend showed up from Chicago, and they had an adventure trying to find something with a map. So that worked really well. This new book that I'm writing, that it's not, this one's kind of, I would call it a modern Western at its base, but it's more than that. The new book is at its base a kind of a book about people that have superpowers, but their superpowers are kind of based on what we were talking about, that synchronicity thing, that thing where something happens and it kind of, you're never sure whether it was just a coincidence or whether it actually happened. And the idea of, it gets really.
Okay. How far along are you in it?
I would like it to be 100,000 words, and I'm 60,000 words into it.
Okay. How many words is this one?
83,000.
Okay.
So I would be happy if it was in the 80 to 100,000 words. But here's the weird thing: is with this new book, I'm calling it Ants and Elephants and Stars, and in Ants and Elephants and Stars, I decided I wasn't going to fall into the trap that I fell into with this, where I had to kind of do a save, like a diving catch at the last minute. Here's the save. I figured out how I'm going to make this thing work by putting it in the right order. I'm going to know where I'm going at the first. I'm going to know from the very beginning where I'm going. So I know I know exactly what I want to do. I know the interactions that I want the people to have. I know the characters. I know what I want them to be like. I know how I want to show their interactions. I know what the ending is. I have it. It's actually harder that way.
How it's harder that way.
It's harder that way.
And do you have a wall that you map it, or what are you doing to keep that, or is it just all here? How do you? Some writers use Post-it notes, and they set up a wall and some diagram it.
I just have a Word document where I write things down. It was really important on Dark in the Sky to know the timeline, to know exactly the timeline of when, how old Van was when Pearl Harbor happened, how old they were, and it actually comes the climax comes at a real fire that happened in Big Sur in the 70s. So it was pretty much delineated by both ends.
Historical fiction. And one thing I want to tie on real quick on that, we just have all witnessed the huge fires in Southern California.
Oh yeah,
and the devastation that's happened, and I know you spent time down there in Southern California, and we both know the area very well, and it's devastating what's happened to thousands of people, and many lives were lost, and of course in Northern California there was recently Big Sur had a fire, Carmel Valley had a fire. The Camp Fire up in the Paradise area, Santa Rosa,
and before that, the Oakland Hills fire, and then the Santa Barbara fire.
And so the way that you put this again in the book, with admiration, is it's the detail's so rich, and it just draws you right into that tension, the tension of getting through that environment and trying to stay alive, just basically survival.
Stay alive,
survival.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy. You're looking to just At first, it doesn't seem so. And that seems to be a common thread that people see. I see some smoke. Oh, it's over here. It's on the ridge. And then the big factor is the wind.
Yeah.
The wind in all these fires. It's the wind that picks up the Diablo wind or the Santa Ana wind, and it just it's a game changer. It gets into the 60, 70, 100 miles an hour.
It turns into a freight train.
Yeah.
It's
and
like
then it's like it's so fast. So that was huge. But again, so you're saying that this new method is harder.
It's harder
because you're planning it out more.
because I'm planning it out, and it's like, there's these there's these spots, where you go, and I think it's part of the joy of life, and I think it's part of the what makes life interesting is when you take on something and you are pretty sure you can do it, but you're not really sure you can do it, and you have to keep on telling yourself you can do it, and you have to keep on again fighting the voices a little bit, but I think that's kind of how I am with this, because I know that this is a hard subject to keep to keep a plot going and keep it interesting, and also to develop the characters the way I want to, because I know where I want them to go. In this one, it was a little bit more of like, well, here, let me write the scene. Oh, look, that's a character. Let me just move that one along a little bit. This one, I'm really trying to go into a spot. I'm trying to make it how I want it, and I'm 60,000 words into it. I'm still not sure I'm going to make it how I want it.
Well,
I will.
This is interesting because we did not touch at all on the amazing business that you and your wife started, and that the projects that you did on retrofitting lighting to high efficiency lighting.
Yeah.
There were projects that were extremely complex, and there were others that were fairly simple. So if you looked at, Darker Than the Sky being something almost formulaic, where you could go into the space and just crank out this kind of formula thing, or what you're doing is, I think it's based on your experience of being able to overcome challenge. And I think look at this Alaska thing that you're up there. You've lived a life where you've pushed through things that were very hard.
Yeah.
And you've come out intact, and not only intact but thrived. And I think that's part of your nature, is that there's an adrenaline, there's a endorphin connection. It's something that I think is built into your being, that this makes sense, that you're going to try something that's more challenging. So I'm looking forward to that book. Yeah.
I noticed with the energy efficient lighting business, a lot of times in order to win a job, you'd have to think differently. If you just went into a job saying, I'm just going to be the lowest bidder, you would have to be the lowest bidder, and that would mean that you were fighting on everybody else's turf. And a lot of times I would go into a job, I go, okay, I'm going to spend some time and some effort on this to really design it ahead of time, so that there's something that I know I can do that's going to be different than what somebody else is going to do, and then I'd get the job. And then lots of times I would. It was a phenomenon that happened over and over again. That it was like, I know what just happened. Oh, darn! I got the job. Now I've got to get it done. And I do. It's a very familiar feeling for me right now. Is okay, I've got this thing that I'm pretty sure I can do it. I mean, I've designed it. I designed it. I looked at everything I could. There's going to be things I didn't know about, of course, and we'll figure those out. Yeah. But I've designed it as best I can. And oh, darn, I got the job. Now I've got to do it. And now I'm like in the middle of the book, and I'm like, now I've got to get this done. Yeah. Well, it's harder. Yeah. It's harder that way. And I think it's just not quite as free, but I have confidence it's going to turn out.
No, it's no, I'm really looking for it. And there's another. Then you're looking at something more of on a self-help. So it's a dual track. So you have something, and this is more of a fiction.
No, this is a kind of a follow-up to Happy Here and Now. Okay. I'll call it.
Well, that's the ants. That's also.
Oh the ants is fiction.
And is it historical fiction, or is it just pure fiction?
It's just pure fiction.
So you're going to a new space again.
Yeah, it's pure fiction. It's absolutely cool. No. I don't have to worry about any timelines or anything like this.
You can make it your own. Yeah.
A lot of it is set in the Grand Canyon, which is kind of cool. And so I.
Is there a time period?
Present.
Okay.
Yeah. So that makes it easy. Okay. You don't have to worry about the. Oh my gosh!
Right? Did that happen then?
Did that happen then, or would you have used a word?
Yes. Right.
That there was, and that was a big deal with Darker Than the Sky. Yeah. No, this is in the present time period.
Yeah. And then you have the self-help, the continuation of the happiness series, It's
Yeah.
almost like a series.
Well, again, it's a
Yeah.
theme that's going through is
Right.
the good life idea.
Well, and that's in here too,
good,
as well.
definitely good life.
And everything that you do, it's your message.
And definitely
It's who you are. It's your brand.
in the new book, in Ants and Elephants and Stars, I'll say it lots of times. Ants and Elephants and Stars by Matt Tracy.
Right.
And it's that kind of goes. I think that's part of what keeps me going is the excitement about what I think is important, and again, the good life, the happiness, and then the next one, there's a spirituality without it being spiritual, without it being really said. It's a sub theme. The new.
How far along are you on that one?
It depends on what I decide the ending is.
Right.
I've got 29,000 words on it, which I could end at 29,000 words. It could be a little,
So
a
you're
little
getting,
book.
and you can go then to the next volume after that.
What this book is. Okay, so let me see. I
Symptoms of Happiness. Is that the working title, or have you locked it in?
It's a working title.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of have an analogy for that of, say that you were going to your first day on a construction job, and somebody handed you a book on how to mix concrete. That would be Happy Here and Now. It'd be like, here's a book, here's how it works. Here's how you mix the concrete. You put the things together. You go like this. You put it, you put it, and you spread it out. Okay, that's your book that tells you how all this works. In the end of Happy Here and Now, there's a whole section where you spend time trying it out, and maybe that would be like what you'd be trying out at home. Symptoms of Happiness is like having the foreman, pull you aside and go, hey, you know what? Here's what you really got to do. And it's not a here's what you really got to do. It's actually, it's stories. I guess that's what it is it's stories about maybe 2 or 3 pages about a story either in my life or something I've seen with a little bit of and that shows you what it is.
Do you think it's important to have this book first and then the new book, or do you think somebody could just pick the new one?
I think go either way.
Or read the second one and then go to the first one.
Yeah.
They work together, hand in glove.
Yeah, and the more you do, again, to go to the concrete analogy, if you've been out working, putting the concrete, and the foreman's been telling you, hey, smooth it out over there. No, don't throw that way. You got to put this in here. By the time you read the book that told you how to do it, you go, I got all this. I've seen this in real life. So when that tells me in a concrete way, it makes sense to me.
Right.
And then vice versa. If you read that the night before and then you went out there, you go, okay, yeah, that's what the book told me. Okay, I got this. So they work both ways.
Got it.
Yeah.
Exciting. Exciting.
Yeah.
Are you happy here and now?
That's one of the there's an essay in Happy Here and Now that says, not Happy Here and Now, in Symptoms of Happiness, that says, I have everything I need to be happy in this moment. And it's surprising how often, if you just take the moment to say it, you'll realize you are. As long as you're thinking about here and now and not thinking about then or what's going to come or anything else.
Right.
If you're just
lock it in.
It's amazing. If you took that for one day and said, let me set an alarm every 5 minutes. You won't do every 5 minutes. Once an hour. If you said once an hour, you set an alarm.
Check.
And you go, all right. And you think about it, you go, yeah, right this second, where I am, I'm happy.
Yeah.
As long as I don't go anyplace else with it.
That is a great break point.
Good.
I think
Let's take a break.
Matt, outstanding. And I look forward to doing this again with the next book.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Once
Thank
again,
you, Mike.
Matt Tracy, author, entrepreneur, all around great guy. Until next time, Uncommon Talks with Michael A. Vickers. See you soon. Bye-bye.